Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today by asking you to picture a very specific kind of person,
Okay.
because we all know someone who is, just incredibly good at trivia. They know the capital of every country, or maybe who won the World Series in 1985.
Right, right. Pure data storage.
Exactly, data storage. But
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that today. I want you to imagine someone who functions like a living, breathing time capsule, but for emotion.
Wow. Yeah, that is a completely different skill set. You're talking about the person who remembers exactly how a room felt during like a rainy Tuesday afternoon 3 years ago.
Yes. They don't just remember the date. They remember the tension in your voice, the smell of the coffee, the unsaid words hanging in the air.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like they have a 4D recorder running in the background of their lives at all times.
Mm.
And today, we aren't just speculating about this. We are unpacking a specific profile from the Max Energy ME80 personality system.
We are.
We're looking at the profile, technically known as the WFSU,
Or, as the report beautifully titles them, the keeper of memories.
the keeper of memories.
Yep.
I mean, it sounds like a character from a fantasy novel, doesn't it?
It really does.
But looking at this report, it's actually a very grounded, incredibly complex psychological profile. But before we get into the heavy lifting of their cognitive wiring, we need to set the stage. For the listener who is totally new to this, what exactly are we looking at with the Max Energy ME80 system? Because this isn't just an internet horoscope.
Oh, far from it. No. The Max Energy ME80 system is essentially a comprehensive roadmap of human energy.
Okay.
It moves way beyond simple behavior. Like, it's not just asking, are you introverted or extroverted? It looks at the underlying energy matrix.
The mechanics of it.
Exactly. It breaks down the mechanics of how you process information, how you handle emotion, and how you make decisions. It's the operating system code, not just the user interface.
That makes total sense. And today we are looking at the code for the WFSU. So let's start right where the report starts, with the identity, the core definition. The report actually calls this personality an emotional recording personality.
And that phrase right there, emotional recording, that's the key to everything we're going to discuss today. It sets the tone immediately.
It really does. And there is this core declaration in the source material that I found really striking. It says, let me read this. Weaving tender memories from sorrow, turning the past into a gentle strength for today.
It's so poetic. But if you look closer, it's actually describing a manufacturing process.
Oh, that's interesting. How so?
Well, they take sorrow, which is just raw, difficult experience, and they weave it into strength. It implies that for the keeper of memories, the past isn't just something that happened and is gone. It's a tangible resource. It's raw material.
Right, which brings us to their control mechanism, or what the report calls their global vision. Because, we live in a world that is completely obsessed with the future.
Right. Move fast and break things.
Exactly. What's
Right.
next? What's next? But the keeper of memories seems to operate on a completely different timeline.
They do. The report explicitly contrasts them with types that rush forward. The keeper relies heavily on retrospection.
Looking back to move forward.
Exactly. Their mechanism is to retain traces of people and events, and then, and this is the crucial part, slowly organize, digest, and understand them internally.
Slowly seems to be the operative word there.
It is, but don't mistake slow for inactive. They are actively building what the report calls soft power. By digesting the past so thoroughly, they create a kind of stability that supports the present.
They make feelings visible.
Yes. While everyone else is running around frantically trying to predict the future, the keeper is quietly anchoring the present by deeply understanding where we came from.
I really love that concept of soft power. It's influence without aggression.
Huh.
But let's pop the hood here. I want to understand the actual mechanics of this. The Max Energy system talks about an energy matrix. What is physically or energetically going on inside the WFSU to allow for this deep processing?
Well, the report characterizes their energy matrix as inward integration. So imagine a spectrum. On one end, you have explosive speed people who project energy outward, like a fire hose.
Right, the super aggressive go-getters.
Exactly. The keeper of memories is on the exact opposite end. Their power comes from absorptive capacity.
So they're like a sponge or a deep reservoir.
A deep reservoir is a great analogy. They convert their experiences into what the report calls foundational logic sedimentation.
Sedimentation. That is literally a geological term, layer upon layer of rock forming over time.
Right. It implies that their personality is solid and unshakable because it's built on layers of compressed experience. And to understand how that sedimentation happens, the ME80 system breaks it down into three specific layers: the IP, the IQ, and the EQ. And the way these stack up for the WFSU is just fascinating.
Okay, let's walk through these because this is where we see the actual wiring of the profile. Let's start with the IP, the inner value layer. This is essentially their moral compass, right? Their operating system for what actually matters.
Correct. And the report defines this specific attribute as risk perception activation.
Risk perception. So this is where the memory aspect stops being just, nostalgic and starts being a survival mechanism.
Precisely. Why do they remember everything? Because their core value system is grounded in assessing safety and risk.
So they aren't just remembering the past for the sake of a nice scrapbook. They're scanning it for danger.
Yes, because they remember every single time things went wrong back in 2015, or they remember the subtle signs right before a project failed in 2018. They have a highly tuned radar for risk.
Wow.
Their values are built around protection, protecting themselves and the people they care about from repeating those pains. They are the ultimate lesson learners.
That explains the caution we often see with this type. The person saying, hey, let's not do that. Remember what happened last time.
Exactly. It's not pessimism, it's data analysis.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the second layer, the IQ, or emotional activation layer. And this is where I think a lot of people fundamentally misunderstand this personality.
How so?
Well, we just established that they are slow digesters, right? Builders of sedimentation.
Yeah,
So you would logically assume their emotional reaction time is also slow.
that would make sense, yeah.
But the report throws us a curveball here. The attribute for their IQ layer is intuition and speed judgment.
Wait, speed judgment? That feels like a contradiction. How can you be a slow digester but have speed judgment?
This is the paradox that completely defines them. They are slow to metabolize and release an emotion, and we'll definitely get to that, but their immediate read of a situation is lightning fast.
Oh, I see.
Because they have that massive internal library of past feelings. When they walk into a room, they get an instant ping.
It's pattern recognition.
Yes, the report literally calls it speed judgment. They can instantly sense the emotional temperature of a room. They know you're upset before you even realize you're upset.
That's incredible.
Right. Now, they might take 6 months to fully process why that interaction happened the way it did, but the intuition of what is happening in the moment is immediate.
That is such a crucial distinction for listeners to grasp. The input is incredibly fast, but the processing is incredibly slow.
Correct. And that leads perfectly into the third layer, the EQ, or decision calculation layer. This is the anchor. The attribute here is emotional carrying capacity and stability.
Carrying capacity. It sounds industrial, like we're talking about a massive cargo ship.
A cargo ship is a brilliant analogy. The WFSU is designed to hold heavy loads in rough seas without capsizing. Their decision-making power doesn't come from being aggressive or charming. It comes from sheer stability.
Holding the line.
Exactly. They can hold space for heavy emotions, both their own and other people's, that would completely crush other personality types.
So that's their true superpower. Stability. So when you combine these three layers, the high-risk perception for safety, the fast intuition for sensing, and this massive carrying capacity for holding it all, how does this manifest? What do we actually see in the real world?
Well, the manifestation layer operates entirely inward. The report lists 3 key actions here: carrying, absorbing, and integrating.
So they aren't projecting their stuff onto you.
Never. They are taking you in. They are stabilizing the environment by absorbing the chaos around them into that sedimentation we talked about.
It paints a picture of someone who is truly a safe harbor. But I want to go a little deeper into their internal world. The report has a fascinating section on inner traits, and it mentions emotion archival analysis.
Yes.
They sound like they have a highly sophisticated filing system.
It's a library, but it's high fidelity. The source actually says they can precisely recreate a conversation's atmosphere and faint feeling. Most of us just remember the bullet points of a meeting, right?
Right. Who said what the action items were.
Exactly. But the keeper of memories remembers the vibe. They organize scattered fragments of feeling into a coherent narrative.
So for them, remembering isn't just looking at a static photograph.
No. And here's the aha moment that the report highlights. For the keeper of memories, remembering is their actual method of understanding the world.
Oh, wow.
They cannot make sense of the chaos of the present until they reflect it against their history.
History reflects on the present to make chaos clear.
Perfectly said. If they can't find a precedent in their archive, the present feels terrifyingly chaotic and unsafe. They constantly need to slot today's experience into their historical timeline to feel secure. They're always answering the internal question, how does this fit with what I already know?
But, and there is always a, but with these deep profiles, this amazing archival system must come with a significant cost. You can't record everything in high definition without running out of space or, just getting bogged down. Let's talk about the shadow blind spots.
The primary shadow side is identified as difficulty releasing.
I can imagine. If you vividly remember every hurt, every awkward moment, how do you ever let it go?
That's the exact problem. The mechanic at play here is high-frequency replays. They don't just remember a bad moment once, they replay the scene over and over in their
Now,
head.
why did I say that? Why did they look at me that way?
Exactly. They risk being completely captured by past negative emotions.
And because they have that massive carrying capacity we discussed, I assume they aren't just replaying their own mistakes.
That's the tragic part. They can be captured by the errors or regrets of others, too. They absorb the sadness of the room. But there is one concept in this section that I think is the single most important takeaway for anyone listening.
What's that?
It's called the digestion time difference.
Digestion time difference. I actually highlighted that in my notes as well. Unpack that for us because it feels profound.
It's the profound lag between their rational brain and their emotional brain. Rationally, a keeper of memories might know a relationship is over. They know the contract is signed, the breakup happened, the argument is logically resolved.
But emotionally?
Emotionally, the file is still wide open. The echoes continue. It takes them significantly longer to metabolize an emotional experience than other types.
So if you are the partner saying, hey, it's been 3 months, get over it already, you are fundamentally misunderstanding their entire operating system.
You're basically asking a glacier to move like a Ferrari. It's impossible. Their digestion time is longer simply because they are processing a much higher resolution of data. It causes an internal imbalance that just takes time to resolve. You absolutely cannot rush their digestion.
That is such a vital insight for relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, let's pivot to social dynamics. How does the keeper of memories show up as a friend or a partner? The report calls their style gentle companionship.
They are the quiet and thoughtful observers. They aren't going to be the loudest person at the dinner table holding court, but they are almost always the most attentive.
And what's their love language? Because I imagine it's highly specific.
Very specific. They express love by remembering.
Simply remembering.
Yes, they remember that you don't like cilantro. They remember your grandmother's name from a story you told 2 years ago. They remember the anniversary of your dog's passing. The report notes that this specific refinement deeply moves others.
It does. I mean, it makes you feel so deeply seen in a world that usually overlooks those details. But is there a friction point here in their relationship?
There is. And it's the tragedy of being the container. Because they are so incredibly good at holding space for everyone else, they very rarely express their own unhealed wounds.
Wow.
It creates what the report calls subtle gaps in relationships.
Always the container, never the contained.
Exactly that. They silently wait for someone else to have the intuition to ask them how they are doing. But because they look so stable, like that giant cargo ship we talked about, nobody ever thinks to ask. Then that is the fundamental loneliness of the keeper.
That really hits home. So we've looked at the personal and the interpersonal. Now I want to pivot to the professional. Because sometimes words like emotional or slow get a really bad rap in the corporate world. Business culture loves speed. But the Max Energy Report claims there is immense commercial value in the WFSU profile.
Huge value. But you have to place them correctly. The report labels them as a memory integration power. Think of them as the natural asset preserver for an organization.
Asset preserver. That sounds highly strategic.
It is. Their core skill is organizing non-standardized information.
What does that look like in a business context?
Think about corporate culture, historical experience, the actual feeling of a brand. You can't put that into an Excel spreadsheet. But the keeper of memories can intuitively organize it into traceable knowledge assets.
So they are the institutional memory. If you fire them, you basically lose the soul of the company.
Yes. In areas requiring patience and continuity, they provide what the report calls high system resilience. When everyone else is burning out or pivoting way too fast, the keeper provides the bedrock stability that keeps the organization standing.
So let's get practical for a second. If I'm a hiring manager, or if I am a keeper of memories looking for a career path where I won't just burn out instantly, what fields does the Max Energy Report actually recommend?
The report identifies 4 main pillars. First, logically, is archives and research. Archive management, historical research, organizing complex materials. They inherently love the process of digging into the past and organizing it.
That makes perfect sense. The whole library concept applied professionally.
Exactly. Second is humanistic creation. This is a beautiful path for them. Biography writing, documentary production, content narrative.
Oh, I can totally see that. A documentary produced by a keeper wouldn't just be a dry list of dates. It would completely capture the emotion of the era.
Exactly. They can weave those faint emotional details into a narrative that truly sticks with an audience. The third field is relationship cultivation. We're talking about deep customer success roles, psychological companionship, or care roles.
So not high-volume transactional sales.
Definitely not. Deep, long-term relationship building where remembering the granular details actually matters and builds trust.
And the fourth pillar.
Organizational support,
Yeah.
culture building, maintaining internal knowledge bases, logistics systems, anything that requires maintaining the soul or the brain of the company over a long period.
It's so clear that their true value lies in depth and continuity. They aren't the sprinters, they are the marathon runners who remember every single pebble on the course.
That is a perfect way to put it. And in a highly volatile market, that kind of stability is a premium asset.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the inward integration matrix to the digestion time difference and the commercial value of asset preservation. But as we wrap up, I want to circle back to the core essence of this profile. The report ends with a golden sentence that I think acts as a brilliant mission statement for the WFSU.
It's a beautiful line. It perfectly summarizes everything we've unpacked today. It says, when overlooked stories are reorganized and forgotten feelings gently received, the keeper of memory's value truly surfaces.
And the second half of that quote is absolutely my favorite part. It says, they light with memory, making past no longer just scar, but light source for continued forward movement.
That is the ultimate shift. That is the grand challenge for the WFSU. You have to turn the scar into a light source. If you just hold on to the scar, it's just a heavy burden. But if you use that memory to illuminate the path forward, it becomes profound wisdom.
That is a deeply powerful place to land. If you are listening to this and you recognize yourself, if you're the one carrying the memories for your family or your team, know that your ability to hold on to the past isn't a glitch in your system. It's a feature. It is a light source.
And if you have a keeper in your life, give them the space they need. Respect their digestion time. And maybe just once, be the one to ask them how they are feeling. Be the container for them for a change.
Absolutely. What if your hardest memories are actually your greatest assets, just waiting to be archived properly? It's something to think about.
Truly.
Now, for those of you who want to see the full map, everything we unpacked today comes directly from the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. We've really just scratched the surface of the WFSU today, and there are 79 other distinct profiles in this system.
It is quite the rabbit hole. If you want to understand your own specific energy matrix or figure out who the people around you really are, you definitely need to check out the full system.
You can find more information by visiting their official website at www.maxenergylife.com. Or, if you're scrolling through social media, you can search for Max Energy Wenko or Met Energy Lac on Facebook.
It is absolutely worth a look. Understanding your own operating system really changes everything.
It really does. Thank you for diving deep with us today. Keep those memories safe, but don't forget to let them light the way forward. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
Take care, everyone.